You got to have fun. And if you're not having fun, it's going to be tough. Things do go wrong, but you know what we learn? We learn that challenges and problems are opportunities. And if you can turn things around to become an opportunity, and we did. We started life as Mercury Sports Footwear, and we ended up with Reebok. And we pivoted from being a running company into a women's company. And we needed a lot of money to make that work. So the only way to do that was to sell the company, stay with it, stay as founder, and we grew from $9 million to a $900 million business in 4 years.
Welcome to the Hard Way podcast with Joe Sena, founder and CEO of Spartan Races. We're teaching you how to overcome your obstacles in your life the same way we teach our 10 million plus Spartans to overcome obstacles on the course, with insight from the smartest, most accomplished experts from every corner of the world. Get ready to elevate your life today.
Joe Sena here, CEO and founder of Spartan and host of the Hard Way podcast. I've got a real special one for you today. I know I say that all the time, but truly a special one. Joe Foster, founder of Reebok. I assume you're sitting in the UK, sir?
At this moment, we're in the UK, yes. In 3 weeks' time, we'll be in the USA, but we're okay. In the UK.
You created Reebok with your family.
Correct.
What did the landscape look like back then? Was everybody running around with sneakers back then?
No. It depends when we started. My grandfather started in 1895, and in those days there were no sneakers. He invented the spike running shoe. But my brother and myself, Jeff, we left the family company in 1958, and there were still not many sneakers around then. They called them training shoes, and training shoes were not cushioned. They were just a rubber sole. So no cushioning. Cushioning sort of came in. I guess cushioning came in more with Nike. I think Nike started to put some in. I know we started to put some heavy rubber in, not the blown rubber and the microcell that we have today. Well, we've got EVA today, but and some very fancy rubbers. But in those days, no. Not much cushioning, not many sneakers.
How did the idea come? Like, what were you thinking? Did your feet hurt? Were you tired of walking around barefoot? What was it?
Not really. I think what really happened is that the Foster family, the J.W. Foster company, they were track and field, so they made spikes, and you didn't get cushioned shoes in those days. Unfortunately, the J.W. Foster company was still making the same shoes in the 1950s that they were making in the 1930s. And, of course, Adidas had now come into the UK, and Adidas had taken the soccer market. So Fosters were losing a lot of business. The shoes were the same. They started to try and change. But unfortunately, my father and uncle just didn't get on. Just like Adi Dassler and Rudy Dassler, they fought. All the time, they fought. The business wasn't going. Rudy Dassler left the Dassler company and set up Puma. Unfortunately, my father and uncle just kept feuding. And that was not good for the business. So the only way that we could move forward, my brother and myself, is to leave the company and set up our own company. So that was the reason for leaving. We were still track and field, but sneakers were coming in. In fact, we didn't even know of Nike in those days. So it was the very early days. And we made our first trainers, where again, there were only a very thin piece of cushioning in those early trainers. It's changed around a lot now. It's a thin outer sole and a lot of cushioning now.
And then you sold the company, or when did you move on from Reebok? What year was that?
Well, I sold the company in 84, and the reason for that was we just hit on the biggest piece of white space that we could hit, and that was aerobics. And we pivoted from being a running company into a women's company, and we needed a lot of money to make that work. So the only way to do that was to sell the company, stay with it, stay as founder, and we grew from $9 million to a $900 million business in 4 years.
Wow. That was the 1980s aerobic mania. I remember that.
Yes, and we were ahead of it.
When you sold it in the 80s, was that to firemen? Who was that to?
Stephen Rubin, who was Pentland Industries, who you may well know these days as JD Sports. JD Sports are in the US, they're all over Europe, they're in Australia. So I still know Stephen, but what he did, he gave us a credit line, and that credit line was was fabulous. I mean, it just wasn't money. It meant that whatever money you needed to spend, you spent. And so he was very soon in debt to 20 million. And it grew from there. But, it took the company almost from zero to $1 billion in those 4 years. So that's what really made Reebok.
Yeah, cash. When you run a business, right, cash is the oxygen. If you don't have cash, very hard to operate.
A credit line was probably better than cash because it just meant we could just keep on buying and selling. Probably took about 2 years, and then we really started making a lot of cash.
What do you want to tell young entrepreneurs? My son last night while I was in the garage and I was doing my exercise, I looked over. My son was packing boxes. He buys and sells used shoes, believe it or not, used sneakers. It's a big market. Every day stuff is being shipped out of my house. What do you tell young entrepreneurs? Like what's the secret sauce to surviving and thriving?
Oh, that's our latest book, Survive and Thrive, yes. I think it's really, is there sufficient room in that market? Is there space enough? Is it big enough? And in case of your son, are there going to be enough second-hand shoes? Well, absolutely, because there are so many new ones around. There's going to be second-hand shoes. It's a funny business. You wouldn't expect second-hand shoes, would you, to be such a big business? But following these trends is very hard. But the main thing is if it's there, make the best of it. So what I would suggest to him is, yes, it all depends on how big he wants to be. What's his ambition? Your ambition with second-hand shoes is you've got to find the market where people have got to have to send them to you. So you need enough second-hand shoes. And if the market is big enough, I think it's going to be big enough. But it's getting out there and making sure that people who've decided to move on, get rid of the Nikes and get the Reeboks, then fine. And I think there's a good second-hand market on Nikes, definitely.
What was it like working with your brother?
Our father and uncle, they never spoke with each other. They just fought. But when my brother and myself, we set up a company, Jeff loved making shoes. So as far as Jeff was concerned, he'll run the factory. Joe, you do everything else. So I got everything else to do, whatever that might have been, marketing, sales, and all the rest of the rubbish. That became my job. And he just looked after the factory. So we never had a bad word, funnily enough. And I must have done an awful lot of weird things and bad things that didn't work. But and he was very tolerant, and he was quite happy for me to do that. He'd look after the factory.
Yeah, I guess that's the trick if you're in business with family or friends is you got to figure out where the dividing line is and not getting each other's hair. I was going to say most companies fail. They don't make it. So you should be proud of yourself. You guys not only made it, you sold it, and it continues on. Why do most companies fail, if you had a guess?
Why do most companies fail? Well, if they could fail very quickly because they don't get the market, they run out of cash, and that's the end. The other one is, you got to have fun. And if you're not having fun, it's going to be tough. And when it gets too tough and you get a bit fed up with that, you don't put the effort in. You're distracted, your mind goes somewhere else. But for me, it was always fun. We had a lot of fun doing what we were doing. And of course, success also brings more fun. It took me 11 years to get to America. My first trip to America was 1968, and I didn't get distribution until 1979. So it was 11 years of keep pushing. Then we had a lot of luck. We produced 3 5-star shoes for Runner's World. At that point, we got credentials. All of a sudden, people wanted us. We were on the market. And then we bumped into aerobics. And that's the story. We just made it with aerobics.
Do you think you make your own luck the harder you work?
Well, people tell me that. I just think we had a lot of luck. You've got to be there at the right time. It's like your son. If he'd have started what he's doing 20 years ago, there'd have been no business. The business is there now. So he's around and he's involved in it. Now it's there. So your luck is, there's always got to be luck. I was talking, it's a couple of years ago now, probably one of the first podcasts I did. A guy in New York, Dan Pink, he's in New York. And we were talking about luck, and he said, yes. He said, we all have luck. He said, I'm just lucky to be born in America, in New York. That's luck. You can't pick that. You can't work hard for that. That's luck. Luck for us is that we were in the running business during the 70s when running went from zero to everywhere, took the street over. So we never had a recession. At Reebok, we never had a recession. All the time, we grew all the time, because the less people work, the more robots we get, the more AI we get, the more people are, even today. Julie and I were out on the road, and there's no traffic on the road on a Monday. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, the road will be absolutely crammed. We'll be queuing all over. But no traffic. Nobody works Mondays, and nobody works Fridays. So they've got more spare time. And that's where sport comes in. They either want to watch it or they want to play it in whatever it is.
I'm lucky in that I'm in sport. And, I listen to a lot of the leaders around the world say they believe sports leagues, sports teams are the most valuable assets in the world right now because, we want to watch it. We want to play it. It's not getting disintermediated by the internet or AI. So I agree with you. And by the way, without sport, we're probably not a very happy species.
True, yeah. Well, it was probably hunter-gathering at one time, but now it's made easy. The supermarkets make it easy for us, so now we've got to do something else, and that's sport. Well, there are new sports coming up, sports like pickleball. It's coming up because it's tennis, but it's made for older people, really. And young people play it and play it very well, but older people can play it. And so you go on, top golf, whatever you want. These things that take less time, make it easier for you. Everybody wants some exercise. Well, like your Spartan running, I mean, that's the tough end of it. That's the real tough end of it. At my age, I would be nowhere near. There are people. I was friends with Carrymore. I don't know if you know Carrymore. Carrymore, they made rucksacks and they had this race. I think it was over 24 or 48 hours where you just raced all the way through Scotland. And that was a real tough race. You had to camp and continue with the race. I don't know if it's still going today because I lost contact with Mike. But sport is there and sport is growing.
I'm going to get you out. We're going to find out where the closest event we have is to where you are in the UK. I just want you to come out and see it. I think you'd be blown away. There's 7, 8, 10,000 people show up. Kind of like those early days in aerobics, only it's dirty, muddy. You're crawling under barbed wire. Very much a military-inspired obstacle course.
Yeah, we used to.
Yeah,
we used to have a military course quite close to where we are. I think about 5 miles away. They used to have a military course there, but that was, what was it called? I can't remember. Julie doesn't remember. Before her time.
What's next? You wrote some books.
Well, we wrote Shoemaker. Shoemaker is that's what's keeping me busy these days. Shoemaker, and it's what inspired Survive and Thrive. Because Shoemaker, when I stepped back from Reebok, we didn't have computers. We didn't have cell phones or smartphones. I'm relaxing nicely in Tenerife, enjoying the sun, and then we get computers. And then we get Google, and we get Wikipedia. And they're telling me, this is how Reebok started. No. There's even a photograph of Joe Foster. It might have been Joe Foster, but it said Joe Foster, founder of Reebok, but it certainly wasn't me. It took me a while, but that inspired me to put the story straight. Okay, this is not how it happened. This is not how it. So I wrote the book. And then, unfortunately, I had some help writing the book. And fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of people picked it up and said, wow, that's a business book. That tells you all the problems you've got to go through when you start a business. I was 23, Jeff was 25. What can go wrong? Well, everything went wrong. We had to change our name within 18 months. We had to change our silhouette after 4 years. So things do go wrong. But you know what we learned? We learned that challenges and problems are opportunities. And if you can turn things around to become an opportunity, and we did. We started life as Mercury Sports Footwear, and we ended up with Reebok. And Reebok was a better name. We had two stripes and a T-bar for our silhouette. And when Adidas wrote to us and said that infringed their 3 stripes. So we were a bit worried when that came in, but we thought, we're a small company. And Adidas know we're here. and they feel they've got a right to us and tell us to stop. So we didn't complain. We just changed our silhouette and we changed it to the vector that you see on Reebok today. And so, yeah, challenges and problems tend to, if you look at it in the right way, they're opportunities. So we had that opportunity. And we also look for white space. And that's one of the reasons we fell into aerobics. We were not too worried if we had to go somewhere. We were trying to compete with Adidas and eventually with Nike, but we didn't want to compete because that cost money. So we wanted space where we could go, that they were not. It was either too small for them or they hadn't heard of it. It was too far away. So we looked for that different space, and aerobics was a big one. That was a big piece of white space. Adidas, Nike, Puma, they were male, perceived as male, sweaty, and team. Aerobics was nice, women. You know, they smell good. They don't sweat like men do. No, they perspire. They glow. So we changed to a woman's company, and Nike and Adidas stood back. And they stood back that long that we overtook Adidas and overtook Nike and became number one. In the mid 80s, we were the number one global sports footwear.
I love it. I want to change the name of obstacles to opportunities.
Should do that.
Yeah. I like that. It's no longer an obstacle course; it's an opportunity course. How do people find you? How can we find you?
How can they find us? You can find us on. We're on Instagram. There's a Reebok, the founder. We're on Instagram, and we're also on LinkedIn.
I love it. And obviously, pick up the book. Anybody could pick up the first book, Shoemaker. The second book
on Amazon. So we can get that on Amazon now. That's right. And we're now working on our second book of Survive and Thrive. So it went so well.
I love it.
There's some incredible stories, and it's right in the Shoemaker. I met so many people, and then we get their stories, and they don't think that they have a story that will make a book. They don't think that, but they're happy to have a chapter, 10 pages, and some of those guys. It's incredible. We have one guy who grew up. He was a youngster in a refugee camp in Russia, and his father was writing to the White House almost every day. Can I come? Can I come? Eventually, the White House wrote back and said, "Okay, you can come. We'll support you for 30 days. If you can get a job and you can look after yourself after 30 days, you can stay." Well, his father got about 3 or 4 jobs, and they stayed. And now this young man's grown up, and he's got a communications company, and he's making a fortune. So that's a thrive. Wow. And there's so many stories like that they're really good. Evander Holyfield, he's also in the book.
Yeah, I'd love to talk to you. I just went through a survival story myself. We got shut down across 45 countries with the pandemic.
Yes.
So our lives were turned upside down. We couldn't put on events. We had customers wanted to kill us. It was crazy town, but knock on wood, now we're starting to thrive again. It was required that I just didn't quit.
Yeah.
I just couldn't quit.
No, I know. You just keep going. That's another one of our golden nuggets. Just keep going. Just keep going. And you get through it. Time is something you've got to pass your way through. And if you can do, that's where the struggle is. Be tough. But luck, we started with luck, and yes, luck is the aerobics piece of luck. We were there at the right time when that happened. And I do think you make your own luck. If you stay around long enough, there are opportunities, lots of opportunities, lots of problems. But then again, if you convert them, there's lots of opportunities. So it's staying around long enough, and I'm really pleased to say that you stayed around long enough. And it seems good. I just looked it up. You got a lot of races going on. So one day you've got time to do a podcast.
It is a wonder, but when somebody like you is available, I'm going to take the obstacle and turn it into an opportunity.
Good.
Thank you, sir. Thanks for taking the time. Next time I'm in the UK, I'd love to see you. Love to have you out to an event. And thanks for what you do and did.
Thank you.